It's a rare look at the craft behind the crown. Angela Kelly is the first ever in-house designer in British royal history and styles the Queen, a role that the 61-year-old has held for 2.5 decades.
At the heart of the monarchy's grandeur stood a woman with a needle, a steady hand, and unwavering loyalty. Angela Kelly didn't just dress a queen. She understood her, supported her, and helped shape her public image with quiet grace. Her story is one of service, sincerity, and a rare bond stitched in trust. The woman behind the throne. Behind the grand ceremonies, the diamond-studded crowns, and the wave-perfect appearances, there was another story unfolding, one quiet, intimate, and unseen. For over 2 decades, one woman had a front-row seat to the Queen of England's most private moments. Not a royal, not a politician, not even a noble, just a working-class woman from Liverpool who won the trust of the most guarded monarch in the world. This is the story of Angela Kelly, the Queen's dresser, personal advisor, and closest confidant. Angela's journey into the royal circle didn't begin with connections or pedigree. She wasn't born into privilege or status. Her early years were spent in council housing, raised by a crane driver father and a nurse mother.
Amid a national housing crisis, in England, almost 34,000 council houses are boarded up and closed down. More than 6,000 have been vacant for over a year.
Her upbringing was humble, filled with hard work and strong values. Angela carried her Scouse accent and her working-class pride all the way into Buckingham Palace. What makes her story so compelling isn't just the rise from modest roots to royal quarters. It's how she earned her place there, through dedication, intuition, and a sense of loyalty that never wavered. Angela became not only indispensable to the Queen, but also one of the few people who truly understood her. Angela didn't wear a crown, yet she held the Queen's trust. She didn't make speeches, yet she spoke volumes through her care. She didn't stand on the balcony, yet she helped craft the image seen by millions. In the grand machinery of monarchy, Angela was one of the quiet gears turning behind the scenes, ensuring everything moved with grace. Her hands didn't just dress the Queen, they soothed, adjusted, tailored, and supported. Her bond with the Queen was forged in the shared quiet of dressing rooms, over cups of tea, through long hours of fittings, and in the hushed corridors before state events. She was the calm presence during chaos, the trusted voice in the whirlwind of royal life. Angela didn't simply witness history. She helped shape its texture, its style, its elegance. And in return, she received something rare: the Queen's enduring friendship. A life-changing encounter in Berlin. Angela's life took a remarkable turn in 1992. At that time, she was working as a housekeeper at the British Embassy in Berlin, a far cry from the grandeur of palace halls. Her role was ordinary, focused on maintaining order and cleanliness, not brushing shoulders with royalty. But fate had something unusual in store. That year, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip were scheduled to visit the embassy.
Britain's Queen Elizabeth and her husband Prince Philip enjoyed possibly the longest royal romance in history. It began over 80 years ago when a teenage princess met a handsome young officer who happened to be a prince.
Staff members were understandably on edge, fussing over every detail, but Angela remained calm and grounded. When the Queen arrived, Angela was her natural self, warm, composed, and quietly confident. She didn't bow excessively or fawn over the monarch. During a brief but genuine exchange, Angela mentioned her plans to return to England soon. That casual comment could have floated away like small talk, but it didn't. Something about Angela, her poise, her authenticity, stuck with the Queen. Months later, to Angela's astonishment, she was contacted by the royal household and offered a position. By early 1993, she had joined the Queen's personal team as one of her dressers. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Angela found herself stepping into the shoes once filled by Bobo MacDonald, the Queen's lifelong companion and dresser. Bobo had known the Queen since childhood, creating a bond that spanned decades. Replacing her was not just difficult, it was almost unthinkable. But Angela approached the role with humility and heart. She didn't imitate Bobo, she carved her own path. Her early days in the palace were marked by observation and learning. Angela didn't assume anything. She studied the Queen's routines, preferences, and the unspoken language of royal etiquette. She paid attention to how the Queen carried herself, what fabrics she favored, what colors made her glow. Angela never saw her role as merely picking out clothes. It was about crafting a visual language, one rooted in tradition and diplomacy. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed. Within 3 years, she was promoted to senior dresser, a role of significant responsibility. She was now in charge of managing the Queen's wardrobe in its entirety, ensuring that every garment worn by the monarch was appropriate, meaningful, and flawless. She transformed the Queen's style into something both regal and relevant, classic, but never dated, becoming the Queen's confidant. As time passed, Angela's relationship with the Queen deepened beyond the formal bounds of duty. The walls of protocol began to soften, revealing a more personal connection. Angela was no longer just a staff member. She became a daily presence, a source of comfort, and someone who understood the Queen in a way few others did. She paid attention not just to fabric and fashion, but to the Queen's emotions, moods, and moments of vulnerability. She knew when to speak and when to listen. She recognized that while the world saw a stoic sovereign, Angela saw a woman with worries, joy, and humor. This insight made her irreplaceable. Eventually, the Queen invited Angela to live within the palace, a rare and significant gesture. From morning fittings to late-night chats over tea, their lives became intricately woven together. Angela had a front-row seat to the Queen's reality, filled with burdens, decisions, and deeply personal matters. Angela never crossed boundaries, but she blurred the line between servant and friend. She was professional when needed, but personal when invited. She could hand the Queen a brooch one moment and quietly offer a hand to hold in grief the next. Over the years, she earned the Queen's full confidence, becoming someone who wasn't just relied upon, but cherished. She once shared that she loved the Queen and everything about her. That sentiment wasn't just for interviews, it was visible in every quiet gesture, in every detail she tended to. Angela understood that the Queen, beneath the crown, was also a daughter, a mother, a wife, and a woman who had borne the weight of a nation. In Angela, the Queen found someone who wasn't intimidated by royalty, but who respected the person behind the sovereign. That balance of reverence and realness was rare, and it became the cornerstone of a unique and enduring friendship. The language of clothes. Angela's role with the Queen's clothing was not simply about looking good. It was about sending messages without words. Each outfit carried a meaning, a carefully crafted narrative that communicated the Queen's position, her sentiments, and her respect for tradition. Vivid colors weren't just a fashion choice, they were a strategic necessity. Angela explained that the Queen needed to be visible in vast crowds, especially at public gatherings or televised events. Shades of canary yellow, electric blue, fuchsia pink, and grassy green weren't selected at random. They were chosen to make sure even the person at the back of a crowd could spot their Queen. Angela's planning process began months in advance. If there was a scheduled visit to a Commonwealth country like Canada, Kenya, or India, she would research everything, from the cultural significance of colors to the country's climate and traditions. A royal tour to Kenya in November, Angela began preparations in the spring. She considered fabrics suitable for humid weather, silhouettes that honored modesty, and colors that respected national identity. Angela was also a firm believer in sustainability, long before it became a global movement. The Queen's wardrobe held rolls of fabric stored for decades. Angela loved bringing those vintage materials back to life. She carefully selected bolts of silk, lace, or brocade from as far back as the 1960s. and reimagined them into contemporary designs that still felt regal. Her workspace in Buckingham Palace was like a fashion archive. Swatches were meticulously labeled. Photographs from past appearances were archived, each annotated with the date, location, and details of the outfit. Nothing was left to chance. Angela ensured that no ensemble was repeated in the same public setting. If the Queen wore a coat to a garden party in 2010,
well, as part of the Queen's visit to Winnipeg, she'll be attending a garden party in just a few hours. It's at Government House and the host is Manitoba's Lieutenant Governor. Now, some lucky Winnipeggers got an invitation to that party.
Angela wouldn't style it the same way again. Instead, she'd update it with new buttons, a changed hemline, or an entirely new hat. This wasn't about vanity. It was about honoring the Queen's public image, her legacy, and the tradition she represented. Angela knew that every inch of fabric mattered. Every brooch placement had meaning. Her dedication turned the Queen's wardrobe into a visual diary, one that told stories of diplomacy, respect, and enduring grace. Angela understood that clothes were more than coverings. They were expressions of power, memory, and identity. And through each tailored sleeve and chosen hue, she helped the Queen speak to the world, clearly, confidently, and always with dignity. Unseen devotion. Breaking in the shoes. Angela Kelly's relationship with Queen Elizabeth II was defined by silent acts of empathy, gestures that never made headlines but were deeply felt by the monarch. One such act came in the form of a simple but telling ritual, breaking in Her Majesty's new shoes. New leather shoes, especially the elegant ones worn by the Queen, are often stiff and unforgiving. For someone whose public duties demanded long hours of standing and walking, discomfort was not an option. Angela's solution was both practical and intimate. She would don the Queen's new shoes and walk through the palace halls, allowing the leather to soften and conform to the contours of a real foot, one not royal, but compassionate. This wasn't protocol. It wasn't tradition. It was Angela's own innovation, rooted in kindness and consideration. She knew the Queen had little time for trial and error with wardrobe discomforts, and so Angela literally walked a mile in her shoes, so Her Majesty wouldn't have to. But the shoes were just the beginning. Angela often made additional alterations to ensure maximum comfort. Heavy gowns adorned with intricate beading could be rough against the skin, so she sewed in extra linings to cushion the impact. Her every stitch, adjustment, and stride was an expression of service not just to the Queen's image, but to her well-being. These tasks required no applause, but they represented the essence of true loyalty, a loyalty that never asked for credit. Angela's care extended to materials that touched the Queen's skin. She experimented with linings, swapped scratchy fabrics for silkier alternatives, and paid close attention to details like seam placement to avoid irritation. If a certain pair of gloves or a handbag strap was causing discomfort, Angela would discreetly modify it. Even the heels of the Queen's shoes, typically blocky to ensure balance and comfort, were tested and occasionally customized with discreet padding to ease pressure on the feet. Angela also developed a filing system to document the Queen's feedback. She would note which shoes caused discomfort, which needed additional breaking in, and which ones could be paired with certain outfits. Over time, this meticulous approach became second nature. It wasn't just about fashion, it was about anticipation, adaptation, and empathy. Her attention to detail didn't stop with the Queen's shoes. Angela was known to carry emergency kits wherever the Queen traveled, complete with extra buttons, threads, safety pins, and even a portable steamer. If a hem unraveled or a thread snagged during a state visit or royal tour, Angela could fix it in moments. On one occasion, after a gust of wind during an outdoor engagement nearly lifted the Queen's skirt, Angela famously began sewing tiny curtain weights into hemlines to prevent future mishaps. Such practical, invisible interventions demonstrated Angela's extraordinary foresight. She never waited for problems to arise. she preemptively solved them. Each preventative measure, from softened soles to weighted hems, was an act of devotion. In the quiet corridors of the palace, Angela was the safety net that ensured the Queen always stepped forward with grace, poise, and ease. The act of wearing in someone else's shoes may seem symbolic, but in Angela's world, it was also literal. It captured her entire approach to service, stepping into the Queen's world, understanding her burdens, and quietly lightening them wherever possible. Angela didn't need titles or medals to define her contribution. Her true honor was found in every comfortable step Her Majesty took, every flawless appearance made possible by someone working behind the scenes with love and care. And perhaps most touching of all, Angela never saw this as a sacrifice. In her own words, she considered it a privilege. She often spoke of her job not just as a role, but as a relationship, one grounded in loyalty and respect. For over 2 decades, she was the Queen's dresser, but also her companion, her confidant, and, through the language of shoes and stitches, her most silent and steadfast ally. In an institution built on protocol, Angela Kelly brought something rare, genuine human connection. Through these small but mighty gestures, she ensured that even the longest reign in British history rested, quite literally, on a foundation of comfort, care, and compassion. The Queen, Bond, and Angela. In 2012, the Queen stunned the world during the London Olympics opening ceremony by appearing in a surprise short film alongside none other than James Bond. The film culminated in a dramatic moment where a stunt double playing the Queen parachuted into the stadium.
I declare open the Games of London, celebrating the 30th Olympiad of the modern era.
It was a moment of unexpected humor and brilliance that showcased a new side of the monarch. Behind this unprecedented moment of levity stood Angela Kelly. When director Danny Boyle proposed the idea, the suggestion was met with skepticism by many in the royal household. The idea seemed too modern, too casual, too playful. But Angela saw something others didn't: the Queen's subtle, mischievous sense of humor. Angela encouraged the Queen to take the risk. She reminded her that laughter is not weakness, it's connection. The Queen trusted Angela's judgment, and the result was history in the making. That 4-minute film not only energized the Olympic ceremony, but also transformed global perception of the Queen. She was no longer just the sovereign, she was relatable, human, and even a bit cheeky. Angela understood that sometimes showing a lighter side strengthens legacy rather than undermines it. Her influence behind the scenes allowed a deeply traditional monarch to embrace modernity without losing an ounce of grace. Laughter in the palace. The stuffed bird. April Fool's Day is rarely a date circled on the royal calendar. In the stately and regimented world of Buckingham Palace, jokes and pranks are not typically part of the day's agenda. But Angela Kelly had a unique ability to introduce warmth and whimsy into even the most solemn environments. One April 1st, Angela placed a hyper-realistic stuffed kookaburra just outside the Queen's window. The bird looked so lifelike that when the Queen spotted it, she momentarily believed it was real. Puzzled and curious, she examined the visitor until Angela confessed it was all in good fun.
Angela Kelly is the first ever in-house designer in British royal history and styles the Queen.
Rather than being annoyed, the Queen laughed, freely, joyfully, in a way seldom seen by the public. It wasn't a reserved, polite chuckle, but a deep, genuine laugh that echoed through the palace halls. That moment, simple as it was, captured the essence of their bond. The Queen knew that Angela's humor was never at her expense. It was a gesture of affection. Angela's ability to read the Queen's moods, to know when a moment needed lightness, made her indispensable. She proved that even within the rigid walls of monarchy, there was room for laughter. Preserving royal history with tea bags. In 2004, Queen Elizabeth decided it was time to retire one of the royal family's most cherished heirlooms, the original christening gown that had been used since 1841. Worn by generations of royal infants, it was now too fragile for further use. The Queen entrusted Angela Kelly with the delicate task of creating a replica, one that would honor the original in every stitch and shade. Angela accepted the challenge with both reverence and creativity. She sourced fine Italian lace that matched the original's intricate patterns, but the fabric was too bright, too modern. It lacked the aged elegance of the original. To remedy this, Angela turned to an old-fashioned solution: tea. Brewing batch after batch of Yorkshire tea, she gently soaked the lace, giving it the soft, antique hue of the original garment. This seemingly simple trick was, in fact, a stroke of brilliance. The result was a gown so accurate in appearance and feel that it seamlessly continued a tradition stretching back to Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria's knickers presented to us, which we actually facilitated the sale of. I think they made about 15 grand at auction.
Since its debut in 2008, Angela's recreated gown has been worn by many royal children, including Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and Archie Harrison. Each christening stitched another chapter into the gown's legacy, thanks to Angela's skill and vision. Life inside the COVID bubble. When the COVID-19 pandemic upended life around the globe, it also transformed the routines of the British monarchy. Windsor Castle became a sealed environment, housing a small trusted group of about 20 staff members who formed what came to be known as the HMS bubble. Angela Kelly was at the heart of this new arrangement. Her responsibilities expanded far beyond wardrobe management. With public engagements canceled and salons closed, Angela took on the role of personal hairdresser. She styled the Queen's iconic curls weekly, ensuring she remained presentable for Zoom meetings and televised addresses. Her styling skills may have been newly acquired, but her care and consistency never wavered. But Angela's role during this time wasn't just cosmetic. As the Queen faced the isolation of lockdown and eventually the loss of her husband, Prince Philip, Angela became her emotional anchor. She provided companionship when few others could, offering silent support through shared tea, quiet conversations, and presence. When the Queen sat alone at Prince Philip's funeral, the image touched millions.
The Queen, masked and in mourning, sat alone for the first time in more than 7 decades.
But behind that solemn moment stood Angela, unseen but steadfast. Her emotional labor during this period was incalculable, and it underscored just how vital she had become to the monarch's inner world. The book that opened the palace door. In 2019, Angela Kelly did something few royal staff members have ever done. She wrote a book. With Queen Elizabeth's personal approval, she released The Other Side of the Coin: The Queen, the Dresser, and the Wardrobe. The book was not a scandalous exposé, but a respectful, affectionate chronicle of life behind the palace doors. Angela shared insights into the Queen's wardrobe decisions, her sense of humor, and the intimate rituals of royal life. She described the practicalities of dressing for wind, for sudden rain, for symbolic moments. From waiting hems, to avoid flying skirts, to selecting colors for diplomatic visits, every detail was planned with care. The book also included touching anecdotes, like polishing diamonds with gin and water or organizing impromptu photo shoots that captured the Queen in unguarded moments. Readers got to see the monarch not just as a figurehead, but as a woman, with preferences, quirks, and quiet joys. Though some within the palace hierarchy were uneasy about the book, the Queen's endorsement silenced critics. The public embraced Angela's work as a rare and dignified glimpse into royal service. A secret wish, casual photos of a queen. Among the many wishes the Queen shared with Angela was a simple one: to be photographed as she truly was. Not as the sovereign draped in diamonds, but as a woman at ease. Angela, always attuned to her friends' unspoken desires, arranged for a private photo shoot. The resulting images were refreshingly candid. In one, the Queen stood with her hands tucked into her coat pockets, relaxed and smiling, not regal, but real. There was no throne, no scepter, no ceremonial backdrop. Just a woman, serene and dignified in her own right. These photos became more than keepsakes. They became symbols of a monarch's humanity, a visual reminder that even the most iconic figures yearn to be seen as they are. Angela didn't just take pictures, she captured a truth. After the throne, a gift, a promise. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away in 2022, the world mourned the end of an era. But for Angela Kelly, the loss was not just national, it was deeply personal. She had not only served the monarch for decades, but had also walked beside her as a friend. After a lifetime spent ensuring the Queen's comfort, composure, and confidence, Angela's own future was secured in a way that revealed the depth of royal gratitude. King Charles III, in one of his first gestures of continuity and compassion, honored the promise made by his late mother.
King Charles III paid tribute to his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, in his first address as monarch.
Angela had been assured she would be looked after for life, and that assurance was fulfilled. Initially, she was granted a grace and favor cottage near Windsor, a traditional form of royal accommodation provided to long-serving staff. But plans changed, and with the evolution of the royal household, Angela was instead gifted a quiet granite bungalow nestled in the Peak District. This home, funded by the royal family and estimated at nearly £500,000, was not just a property, it was a symbol of trust, of legacy, and of a unique role in royal history. The serene landscape stood in contrast to the gilded corridors she once walked daily, but it offered the tranquility she had long earned. There, she could retreat with dignity and reflection, surrounded by nature, away from palace protocol, but always in its cherished memory. The agreement that came with this home was discreet but clear. Angela would not trade palace secrets for publicity. Yet she retained the right to share her own story, one she had already begun telling in her published memoirs. The royal family respected her voice, trusting that it would echo the same discretion and affection with which she had served the Queen. Angela's final chapter within the royal institution closed with grace, and her transition into a private citizen was wrapped in the same warmth she had extended to the Queen. She was no longer just a member of staff. She was a woman remembered with gratitude, a friend honored in quiet permanence. Honors and recognition. Angela Kelly's service to the British monarchy was marked not only by daily devotion, but also by formal recognition that underscored her exceptional role. Over the years, her name appeared in official honors lists, not as a celebrity or dignitary, but as someone whose impact was felt deeply behind closed doors. In 2006, she was appointed a member of the Royal Victorian Order, MVO, an honor given personally by the monarch to recognize extraordinary service to the royal family. This was not a recommendation of government, but a gesture from Queen Elizabeth herself. It was the Queen's way of saying, "I see you. I value you." 6 years later, in 2012, Angela was elevated to lieutenant of the same order, an uncommon progression that spoke to the evolving depth of her contributions. She wasn't simply preserving clothes or preparing appearances. She was preserving dignity, upholding tradition, and easing the daily burdens of a sovereign. In 2014, Angela received the Queen's Long and Faithful Service Medal. This award is given to staff who have served the royal household with loyalty and excellence over an extended period. In Angela's case, it was more than well-deserved. Her years were marked not just by consistency, but by compassion and ingenuity. Finally, in 2023, following the Queen's passing, King Charles III included Angela in the Demise Honors list, elevating her to Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, CVO. It was a capstone to her royal service, a nod from the new monarch that her place in royal history was secure and valued. These honors weren't public fanfare, they were tokens of heartfelt gratitude. Each medal and title was a thread in the tapestry of Angela's legacy, each one affirming that loyalty, discretion, and heartfelt service matter as much in monarchy as lineage and protocol. A legacy woven in threads of trust. Angela Kelly's story isn't one of fairy tale transformation. It's not about ascending to royal favor through accident or ambition. It's a story of showing up every day with integrity, of listening closely, and of caring when no one was watching. In a world often dazzled by titles and spectacle, Angela offered something quieter, but infinitely more enduring: trust. She was the seamstress of symbols, the steward of silence, the architect of elegance. Her legacy doesn't lie in designer labels or sparkling brooches, but in the comfort she gave, the dignity she preserved, and the rare trust she held. Angela was never the face of the monarchy, but she helped shape the face it presented to the world. Even now, as she enjoys a more private life in the Peak District, Angela's story resonates. It speaks to the power of service, the beauty of quiet dedication, and the strength found in humility. She is a reminder that sometimes the people who stand in the background are the ones holding everything together. Angela Kelly didn't just dress the Queen, she dressed history, one stitch at a time. Angela Kelly's legacy will never walk beside crown jewels in a glass case, but it lives on, in photographs, in traditions, in the comfort of carefully softened shoes, and the dignity of a sovereign well kept. Her story teaches us that devotion, when lived sincerely, becomes its own kind of royalty. In Angela's hands, fabric became memory, and silence became service. And in the heart of a queen, she found not just a role, but a place forever held with affection